Welcome to the Football Show on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. I'm Peter Martin, Alan Ruff, Hugh McDonald and Alison McConnell here with me in the studio on a day when so many people look back at two people that we've lost in the football world. One of them, Denis Law, the other, Jimmy Calderwood. We will be talking about the two great men. We'll also look back over the weekend in the Scottish Cup results and look ahead to a week which has European football at its heart. Celtic involved against Young Boys and Manchester United against Rangers. So lots to fit into the show, but of course we're going to start looking back at a very, very famous number 10, Denis Law. The man dubbed the King, Denis Law, has sadly passed away aged 84. Born in Aberdeen, he started his career with Huddersfield before moving to Manchester City. He then made the switch to the continent to Italian outfit Torino for a British record transfer of £110,000. He scored 10 goals in 27 games in Serie A before Sir Matt Busby signed him for Manchester United in 1962. It was at Old Trafford where he cemented himself as one of the greats. 237 goals in 404 appearances ranks him as third all-time scorer for the Red Devils, behind only Bobby Charlton and Wayne Rooney. Denis will forever be known as the King of the Stretford End and is immortalised in bronze alongside George Best and Bobby Charlton. He remains the only Scottish player to win the Ballon d'Or. For Scotland, the lawman was capped 55 times and his 30 goals make him the country's joint top goal scorer alongside Kenny Dalglish. In 2004, UEFA named him Scotland's most outstanding player of the previous 50 years. In 2021, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease and vascular dementia, before sadly passing away on the 17th of January 2025. Revered by fans and fellow players alike, Denis Law was one of the greatest players Scotland has ever produced. Pelé once commented, "Law at his peak was the only British player capable of playing in the great Brazil side of the 1960s. High praise indeed, Hugh McDonald.
It's interesting that because the Brazil team of Pelé talks about 1960s. The Brazil team of the 1970s, I think, is the greatest. Well, it is the greatest international side I've ever seen. And Hugh McIlvanney used to say that his kind of benchmark when people could go on about, you know, he's world class. McIlvanney says, could he play for the Brazil team in 1970? And that was his measure. And he believed two Scots could have done so. And it says Denis, definitely, and possibly Souness, interestingly enough. But he said Denis could have played for, in fact, would have complemented that team, because that team had a lot of fantastic players in it. But they didn't have a sort of, it sounds ridiculous, Pelé scored 1,000 goals, but they never had sort of a designated goal scorer or something like that. And he thought Law would have complemented that team. So high praise indeed. But I mean, you used a great word there, Peter. You said he was revered, and I think that I think people of my age, I think anybody who's a pensioner, no matter what team they support, no matter what gender they are, no matter what, you know, their views in politics and that, I think if you're a pensioner in Scotland, you'll look at Law with awe and respect and gratitude. It meant so much to us in the city. I'm not Manchester United fans or anything else, but I used to play with my mates in Busby, Celtic and Rangers fans, you know, right down the middle. But everybody loved Law. Everybody loved Law. He was something special.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're one of those lucky people who, and I count myself in that bracket, who has the good fortune to host events where basically he is the star of the show and you are just the support act to try and make the glue of the questions to extract out of him what a remarkable life that he had. And I was able to interview him on 2 or 3 occasions, but the one that sticks in my mind, Ruffy, is the Scottish Football Hall of Fame when he was inducted into it. And as he walked up onto the stage, I mean, honestly, the place was just standing ovation. I mean, he was just the man, the king. And when he came up onto the stage, he was just humble. He was fiercely patriotic, Ruffy. I mean, a man who was so proud of playing for Scotland. And also, I think, you know, would have loved to have played more games in a World Cup. Certainly wasn't as lucky as yourself. But also, he highlighted the fact that he was part of a team. And, and he talked about George Best, and he talked about Bobby Charlton. And then when I actually just pressed him on how he would like to be remembered, in the history of Scottish football, he welled up, and you could see the tears in his eyes. It just meant everything to him to be respected, to be honoured by the Scottish public, and to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. It meant everything to him.
Yeah, it is a hard thing to explain pulling on that Scotland jersey. It does mean a lot to, obviously, the person himself, their family and everything, and growing up, and pulling it on is a tremendous occasion. You know, Denis was just a wee era just before me. I think I was about 14 or 15 before the 67 game. But all the guys I used to play with in the park, if they were a striker, wanted to be Denis Law. No, they all wanted to be Law. They'd all be fighting, I want to be Denis Law. Wee Jinky would get a mention as well. And I was talking to you guys that the game that I remember was the Scotland-England game at Hampden when Scotland won 4-3. And I was hearing the goals that they were getting in, and Law's name was mentioned nearly every part of the goals that were getting in. So as far as Scotland's concerned, absolute legend, and I think I had the pleasure to meet him, but anybody that I have met him, has said exactly the same as you.
Yeah, and the other thing I was reading in the Telegraph, the English journalist Jim White, not the Jim White of Talksport, but the English journalist Jim White, wrote a lovely tribute to him, just basically saying, if he was being sold today, Alison, in today's market, you could start at 150 million.
It's extraordinary. I think it's very difficult to cross eras and generations. But what you would say is that all the qualities that he had in a modern day would put him up there with the very best players that we see in the contemporary game.
Yeah, and the other thing about it as well, which I liked about him, Hugh and Ruffy will know this from our experiences in sport, a wee nasty bit about him.
He was mean. He had to be. He was playing in at a time when the game was overtly physical, and he would stand up for himself. I think years and years ago, I'm a great man for raking around second-hand bookshops and buying old biographies of footballers and that. And there was one called The King, Denis Law, and I thought, I'll take that away in my holidays, that'll do me on the plane. And it was terrific, not just for the football years, because in those days, footballers had to explain their football in cliches, and, he'd be disappointed, and I didn't really go on with him. But the two bookends of his life were hugely interesting. And this is what we talk about eras. Denis Law came from poverty. You're talking about poverty. Denis Law was at times brought up hungry, literally hungry. He was the son of a fisherman. It was very capricious kind of living. So he was brought up hungry. He was brought up with a squint that needed. Can you imagine having that back in the day, having eye surgery back in the day?
Yeah.
But the most interesting thing about it was, towards the end of the book, he said, so I decided not, he had a bad knee injury, of course, he decided not to take up an option of playing for another year because my knee was went. He says, but luckily my mate owned a carpet warehouse and I became a carpet salesman. This is a guy, greatest Scottish player ever.
Ballon d'Or, wasn't it?
Ballon d'Or. So he's selling carpets with this Ballon d'Or sitting in his sideboard. And he wasn't moaning, he wasn't groaning, he was just getting it on with it. This is what he had to do. This was his life. And I just went, good Lord, how the game has changed.
It's unimaginable.
Absolutely.
Changed unimaginable. You think there will be League One players in England who will retire and never have to work.
And good on them as well, great.
Yeah. But given a Ballon d'Or winner, the magnitude, the level with which he reached to then say, I'll go back to my day job, I'll go to a day job.
I don't want to put you in the spot here. Can I ask you how he started at Huddersfield?
Well, it was just like being spotted. He was scouted from, and of course he was scouted heavily because Shankly was the manager. So the scouts. He was one of those stellar talents, but he was obviously coming from what would then be a football backwater in Aberdeen. Yeah. But there was a few guys had him under the sights, and going to England was going to give him some money. And one I remember, without making too much of it, but it was very probable. We went to Huddersfield as a very young teenager, and I presume that there was money put to the family to, you know, Huddersfield were a good team at the time, in the second division in England, but, you know, I would imagine there was a few bob in it for the family, you know.
The other thing about it, Hugh, which is probably more prominent nowadays in the modern day football, where you have a team that has one, maybe two, possibly three Ballon d'Or winners in it, to have three in the same Manchester United side is so unusual. I mean, he's the only Scottish winner of the Ballon d'Or, but best, Charlton. It's incredible, isn't it?
I mean, no wonder they've got a statue outside to the three of them. But it's interesting. I mean, that team was strong. I mean, it sounds daft to say, of course it was strong. But Paddy Crerand played. You know, he was the right half.
Yeah.
Brian Kidd was a young guy coming through. John Aston was an England World Cup. He was in the World Cup squad. He didn't play in the final. So there was Alex Stepney in goals. I mean, Shea Brennan's probably a contender for Manchester United, with Gary Neville, contender for Manchester United's best right back ever. I mean, it was a strong team. It had to be, because it was going up to try and win European Cups, and it was Manchester United as well, which is a glamorous name then.
And I feel really old, Ruffy, on this point alone. And it's just because you're like, you know yourself, Ali, as you go through journalism and you meet people or you interview them, and you're in broadcasting, you're so lucky. I mean, I lived in Edinburgh and had Joe Baker as a co-commentator on, you know, some games, and Joe Baker would tell me stories about him and Denis Law in Italy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, I live 3 doors along from Johnny Haynes.
Oh,
I mean,
goodness gracious. The £100 a week man.
Yeah, I mean, it's just mental when you think about people that you've met in your life. But to try and put it into perspective as well, you know, players going to Italy at that time was all too rare, Ruffy.
Yeah, it certainly was. Obviously, we had some players who went to it later on, but the early ones were the Charles,
The big John Charles.
They went very early, but it just shows you that even to this day, our Scottish players are still well accepted over in Italy. For I don't know whether it's the mentality or the style or the way they play, but Italian football was
You can imagine how much of a move that would have been, like the cultural significance of moving, you know, the days way beyond not even internet, but even phone. Like, not everyone has got access to phones, and you know, no knowledge really of the culture that you're going into, the language, the style of football.
No player liaison people.
Or the exposure to a different kind of football. Like, how it would be like being dropped on Mars now.
Yeah, I think Dennis said he liked the food, he liked the beer, and he liked the wine. You know, but if you're two Scots boys there, you're just sitting saying...
As famously Ian Rush said, it was like playing in a different country.
Yeah, exactly. There are 2 things that stick in my mind before we move on, because I think I would like to
take one story.
I want you to give me one story, but the one thing that I would say for kids that stick in my mind is, you know, when you think of... I think of Dennis with a shirt, and he when he scored, he held his cuffs, Ruffy, and he had his shirt outside his shorts, and it was iconic with the number 10 on the back. That's when he scored a goal. I mean, he was absolutely sensational, always smiling, scored the goal and had the cuff up. And then the second thing that I always remember as a kid is, I never forget, how can you be discarded by Manchester United and ultimately score a back flick, which if any kid at this moment wants to go on YouTube and put Denis Law, Manchester City against Manchester United in '74, it didn't relegate United, but it didn't help their cause. And he scores a back flick to beat United, and then walks off the park and never kicks a ball again.
I know.
I mean, it's just outrageous.
I know. The great story about him is that it was told to me by Jonathan Watson, who's commonly called a great comic actor, but Jonathan Watson is just a great actor.
Yes.
He's a real...
I
He can do anything. He's a genius in his own right, I would say, which would embarrass him. But anyway, Johnny Watson told me that he was a great, being of my age, and that he had the awe and reverence that I had for Law. And he said he was chairman or an MC at a dinner, and Law was there, and he says, I was just stunned by him all night, and he was so gracious and polite and just wonderful company. At the end of the night, he says that, you know, what Dennis was like. He said he'd put on his cashmere coat and the silk scarf, and he was sort of flouncing out of Hampden. And the event that was done in that Hampden suite, the bikes onto the pitch. And Jonathan's searching for him to say cheerio to him and said, Dennis, he says, oh, thank you very much for coming. And he looks out and the lights are on in the pitch. And he says to Dennis, oh, you must have had some wonderful memories out there, you know. And Dennis looks and goes, not really, no. And turns and walks off. And I just thought that was so Dennis, just puncturing any greatness. Just, not really, no.
And Hugh might back this story. I was just reading that story you're telling about the back heel, and we talk on this show, don't we, quite a lot about players not celebrating. You know, that sums up why you don't celebrate, you know, because of the history. But after that, although he never celebrated, am I right in saying that right after the game he went into the Man United dressing room and apologised to all the players?
But it was just the
it's a different argument though, Ruffy. I mean, we're talking about, we argue about the fact that if you play for somebody and then you're signed for somebody else, and you score goals, celebrate. And I accept what you're saying, Ruffy. I thought about it the other day there. Denis Law was a legend at Manchester United.
It's a word that's overused.
You know what I mean?
I mean, it just is. I mean, it's
like
odd.
Henrik Larsson never celebrated when he scored against
Well,
Celtic
exactly.
for
There's a
Barcelona.
great argument for it, you know.
But he was on such a level for Manchester United that, I mean, it is immortal. I mean, the statue alone means it's immortal because kids in 2050 or kids in 20, whatever it is, 100 years from now, will be going along with their fathers and everything and saying, well, who are these guys? And they'll be told who they are. And three distinctive personalities as well, three distinctive players. And I'm just glad that he, I said in my piece that he brought great joy into my life.
Yes.
I could say that, an excitement. There was an excitement about not going along to Hampden for a Scotland-England game or a Scotland-Northern Ireland game or whatever, and Law was playing.
Absolutely.
There was an excitement, so I'm grateful for that.
And I think of all the broadcasters and people who were lucky enough, like yourself, to see him in the flesh play football, I think what sums him up as a fiercely proud man to wear the dark blue of Scotland is the fact that he berated Jim Baxter and the rest of that crew because he didn't want anybody to play keepy-uppy. He wanted to absolutely batter England in 1966.
Well, he played in the 9-3 game.
Yeah.
He played in the 9-3 game at Wembley. So he was very vengeful about that. And he was playing in a dressing room as well, Peter, where there was a real animosity. Well, not a real rivalry. I mean, it's not a rivalry against Scotland and England now when basically we know England are better.
Yeah.
I mean, we do. So it was a real rivalry. When people say, no, we're better than you.
Yes.
You know, he was arguing with players in the dressing room. He was a competitive man as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the ultimate tribute, like you mentioned there, and it summed it up perfectly, Hugh, when you go to a ground anywhere to see somebody that can make you happy because they're just special, that was Denis Law. Lovely tributes to Denis, and I think equally so to Jimmy Calderwood. Because not many of us would have probably known him as a player, but certainly knew of him as a manager. And Jimmy was such an infectious, likeable character. He was always accessible, great chat. And alongside Jimmy Nicholl, it was a partnership. It was up there with Eric and Ernie at times. They fed off each other brilliantly. But of course, Jimmy in his own right, with Aberdeen, I think a lot of Don's fans will look back with great affection, Alison, at what he achieved as a manager up there.
I think he'll be held in those kind of affectionate terms at quite a lot of clubs, and as just in terms of his relationship with Scottish football as a whole. He was a kind of character of Scottish football. I didn't actually have too many dealings with him, but the dealings I did, I found him funny. He's quite offhand, quite, I think you knew what he was and where he was from, but he was funny. He was a light-hearted nature to it, while of course I think doing a decent job with the teams that he managed.
Yeah, I mean, Dunfermline fans will look back on him with great affection because of what he achieved there. He knew his stuff. I think ultimately, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here and doing him any disservice, I think the ultimate job for Jimmy would have been managing Rangers.
Oh, aye.
Because he absolutely was a die-hard Rangers fan. He loved Rangers.
Absolutely.
It would have been the ultimate job for him, Hugh.
And he, you know, there was this perception of him, you know, an only excuse or whatever, you know, this permatanned Rangers fanatic, the way he's speaking and all that. And it probably did him a gentle disservice in that he was a serious coach. I mean, he went to Holland. That's where he learned his coaching. And the reason he went to Holland is he thought that'd be the best place to learn how to coach because a total football and what he was in. And that, if you watched the Jimmy Calderwood team, all he needed was a bugler. I mean, it was like, charge! I mean, it was really adventurous. And he met up with serious people. I mean, he played against Cruyff and became, I wouldn't say close to Cruyff, but met Cruyff a few times and could talk to Cruyff about things and all that. And of course, he played under Alf Ramsey as well at Birmingham. So he certainly had sort of connections to football and royalty. He went to see, there's a good story about him going to see the day that Ruffy made his greatest save against Wales in the World Cup at Anfield.
Yeah.
Ruffy's
Smiling at you, don't know
Just
this
wondering
story.
which goal he was going to talk about.
No,
That's a save.
Oh, right.
Great save, remember, against Touch.
Right, okay. Right.
And one of the things that's seared in my memory and life, YouTube at younger folk, but it was a save that took Scotland to a World Cup. Jimmy is playing with Birmingham, but it's day off. They've been given a day off because they've played the night before. And he's standing at a bus stop with the Tammy and the Scotland scarf, ready to get a bus into the pub to meet the boys and go to Anfield and watch Scotland v Wales and have a right batter at it. And Alf Ramsey turned up at the bus stop and said, "You want to lift into town and all that?" No, I'm fine. He was trying to play Tammy away and all that. Just going to do a wee bit of, no, that. And anyway, so he goes to the game, gets blutered. He says the next day, he said, "I had the hardest training session of my life because Alf Ramsey knew where I'd been the night before and he was punishing me in so many levels."
Was Jimmy Calderwood, when he was at Aberdeen, the influence of the Dutch players coming? Was that after him? Hillhouse and all them?
2004 to 2009.
So it was a bit after the
It was
Dutch.
just a wee bit after him, I think. 92, I think, Heelhouse. I may be corrected on this, but
No,
I know that I know from 2004 to 2009, certainly one of the peaks and the highlights of the Aberdeen sides that he was building and trying to constantly just bring in better players is the UEFA Cup run, because they managed to get to the last 32 against Bayern Munich, had a really credible 2-2 draw up at Pittodrie. I remember it was a great night for the Dons. In fact, some would suggest it could have been one of those nights where they thought we could recreate what the great Aberdeen side did up at Pittodrie. But then you go to the Olympic Stadium and Bayern Munich gave them an absolute doing.
I think
in
it
the
was
return.
5-1, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
5-1.
It's a funny kind of things with football. Just one game can determine you. I mean, they lost the Queen of the South in the Scottish Cup semi-final. I think it was 2008. It was Queen of the South ran Rangers really close in the final that year because Rangers had a fixture pile. I remember with the.
Was that the game they were all getting sent off?
Well, I don't know if it was that, but they ran them close anyway. I think it was Smyrna game they all got sent off.
It wasn't.
And Jimmy would talk to Walter Smith after the game, and Walter Smith said, "If you'd have beaten Queen of the South, you'd have beaten us today. We just beat Queen of the South, and if you'd got through the semi," and that always stuck with Jimmy. He always stuck with him. He said that. I think we would have as well because we were out on our feet and we'd have been fresh and blah, 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 blah. So it's funny how...
And when it gets away.
And when the one again... People, but as you know, top sportsmen are always defined by failure rather than success.
Yeah. And by the way, the Aberdeen side of that time that played against Bayern Munich, Langfield, Xander Diamond, Considine, Mayer, Maybury, Severin, Barry Nicholson, Walker, Lee Miller, Sonny Aluko and Mackie. That was the starting 11. So, I mean, it's not exactly rippling with unbelievable quality.
No.
They were just a good, hard grafting side as well. So, and then eventually get, Bayern Munich had Schweinsteiger, Klose and Tony in their side, and Di Michaelis and Lucio. Do you remember Lucio?
The big Brazilian centre half.
Yes, absolutely. So they had a good side. To go 2-2 with them was absolutely, immense. And of course, he'd done Dunfermline and he managed Kilmarnock as well. And I think the worst thing about it, Alison, and this is where I think we'll get a great insight into it in the Footballers Football Show this week, because Alzheimer's it's just, for me, one of the worst diseases, because when you get someone who's such a shining light like Jimmy, as well as Denis Law, these things, it's such a debilitating disease. It just, all that sparkle is gone month after month, year after year, and the families suffer when they see such a shining light just grow dim.
Yeah, I think it's cruel. I think it's a really cruel illness. I think the slow nature of it just ebbs away, and it just erodes personality and all sorts. I think it must be very, very difficult for families to watch it, but also too, you think 69 is young. In a comparative age now, 69 is nothing. And I think it feels particularly cruel.
Yeah, absolutely. He was, for me, a smashing guy. I loved being in his company. He was funny, especially after dinner stuff as well, Ruffy. Both him and Jimmy Nicholl as a pairing were absolutely magnificent. I think a lot of Aberdeen fans and Dons fans looking back on him will have fond memories of him, as well as all the other clubs he managed and the clubs that he played for as well. I'm not going to apologise. I think sometimes in Scottish football it is only right and proper that you pay a tribute to people that have graced our game and brightened our game as well, to be perfectly honest with you. And Denis Law and Jimmy Calderwood certainly did that, and I hope you enjoyed our tribute to them. We'll have the news, and then we'll look at the Scottish Cup from the weekend.
Hello and welcome to your daily news headlines on Monday the 20th of January, sponsored by Arnold Clark Rewards. Buy a car, download the app and get rewarded. Rangers beat Fraserburgh 5-0 to progress in the next round of the Scottish Cup, but now all focus turns to Old Trafford and Manchester United on Thursday night as they face off in the Europa League.
Yeah, obviously every game's a massive game for this club. And Thursday's another one, so you look forward to it. The team's not picked yet, so everyone will be in training at the best, so just what you've got to do and look forward to Thursday. Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest. We've done well in Europe, and we need to start getting our run going in the league as well, which we've done over the past few weeks. So yeah, it's just about taking it each game as it comes and making sure we're fully prepared, and we'll do that.
Kieran Bowie returned from a 4-month absence due to a hamstring injury for Hibs on Saturday as they beat Clydebank, but he wants to continue making positive steps.
Yeah, obviously it's a really good feeling that you're coming back on the pitch. I had a smile on my face just to actually be on the grass again, even if it is half an hour, 5-10, even if it's like 5-10 minutes. Still, just to be back out there, that's like, as I say, it's like another milestone. It's just another tick, and we just need to keep ticking them off.
The last team to enter the next round of the Scottish Cup will be decided tonight at Dens Park as Dundee take on Dundee United in the Dundee Derby. And of course, PLZ Soccer will be there to have you covered, so make sure that you follow our social media channels to get all the action as it happens. Those were your daily news headlines on Monday the 20th of January, sponsored by Arnold Clark Rewards. Buy a car, download the app and get rewarded.
Thanks to Cara for all the latest news headlines. Here's the Scottish Cup results. Let's take a look at the first batch. Brecon 1, Hearts 4, Broxburn 0, Ayr United 8, Cove Rangers 2-4 for 0, Dumbarton 1, Airdrieonians 5, Dunfermline 3, Stennismuir 0, Elgin City 0, Aberdeen 3, Hamilton 3, Musselburgh 1, Hibs 3, Clydebank 0. So not really any shocks in that batch that we had maybe predicted, Ruffy.
No, on Friday we looked at it and we were obviously looking at shocks. We couldn't really pin Queen of the South.
Yes.
I thought that would have been a hard one, but St Mirren got about them pretty early on, so that went out the window. So, and we didn't even think the Livingston one would be a shock.
Yeah,
Up at
no, I
Ross
don't think we
County,
did.
so
Yeah.
Kind of notable rather than a shock.
So I don't think the weekend there was that many. Wraith Rovers beating Falkirk.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, here's the second batch. It's obviously a lot of fixtures. And in this one, it was Queen of the South 1, St Mirren 3 that you alluded to, Ruffy. Queen's Park 3, Montrose 2. I think we'd all picked Queen's Park. Ross County 2, Livingston 3. St Johnstone 1, Motherwell 0. We'll hear from Simo Valacari on that one. Celtic 2, Kilmarnock 1. Falkirk 1, Wraith Rovers 2. Rangers 5, Fraserburgh 0. And of course, the Dundee derby at Dens Park is the last of those fixtures before the draw is completed right after that Dundee derby. 5-0 for Rangers, hat-trick for Dessers, but in true Dessers fashion, he misses.
Oh, the first.
Is it up there with Peter Van Vossen?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's,
He's got to bust it,
he's got to. I don't know what he tried to do, but true form boy gets a hat-trick, and the smile on his face when he got the third one said it all for me.
Yeah, absolutely. There is, Nsiala and McCausland got the other goals. And by the way, Dessers sets up McCausland. I mean, he's one of those boys that I, having witnessed him in a press conference on a couple of occasions, Hugh, he's such a likeable guy, and he takes it with a pinch of salt, the highs of scoring goals, the hat-trick, and then he's fairly philosophical about the facts that he's sometimes vilified for missing sitters, not getting crucial goals, one-on-ones. I mean, it was a howler of a miss. He'll focus on what I think is the right thing to do, is say, hey, I've got the hat-trick, I've got the ball.
He's got a wage as well. I mean, he's earning good money there. So, I mean,
Yeah.
if he's philosophically stable, he was saying, listen, I'm getting good money. I'm nobody's. I'm not in any, danger of any health problems or anything like that. I'll just go on and do what I do. And you've got to be like that, because you're going to get criticism. You're going to get criticism in big clubs. He's one of these guys that if you actually put his stats up, I bet you his stats would be really pretty impressive, goal by game.
Well, 16 goals for the season, Hugh.
Exactly. So, I mean, you would be saying if you hadn't watched him, if you hadn't seen the social media noise about him, if you said Rangers have got, Rangers are well behind the league, but they've got a 16-goal striker already, you'd be looking and saying, well, that's pretty damn impressive. But it's just this propensity he has for missing big chances. But as someone once said, if he scored with every chance, he wouldn't be at Rangers.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
I think there's a question mark maybe about pressure. About when the pressure's on, he seems to lose his composure a bit. I think that's maybe one of the real issues that he has. In a game like that against Fraserburgh, when he missed that chance, he would have known that there's another couple coming along. Whereas I think maybe in the bigger games, and maybe against Celtic or in some of the European games, you're maybe not as assured as that. I think it maybe plays a bit more in your mind if you miss an opportunity.
Well, the Rangers manager, Philippe Clement, obviously is aware that he may well be getting out the door. I think if he goes out the door, the Rangers manager wants somebody in his place.
If Cyril goes, you need to replace him, and it needs to be at least the same quality. If a player stays and he plays less and he becomes, because of that, unhappy, and it goes down his level, what I don't fear with him, it's also not good for the club. So we will see in the next 2 weeks what happens. I know if he's here, he will give everything for the club, and if he leaves, he needs to be replaced by somebody at least from the same quality.
Yeah, and that's the trouble with these things, because sometimes, be careful what you wish for. As he goes out the door, you've got to try and find somebody who can score 16 goals, and equally so, as I often mention, James Tavernier eventually goes out the door. They'll have to find a right back that can score, in excess of 130 odd goals.
Yeah, and that's why there's so much pressure put on director of football. The other ones that have got to identify that player that you're talking about coming in. But I think he's still got something to offer at Rangers. We're talking about he misses them, but he scores them as well.
I think he'll be off, Ruffy.
Yeah, he's off because Rangers need the money. They need money, to buy other players. I think if they get money for him, have you phoned Charlie Adam to put a value on him yet?
Charlie just says to me he reckons 38.5 million.
Well, they need them. They need to get that money in, But you're right. Are they going to get somebody in who's going to score 16 goals?
The problem with him, though, in the whole thing is his wages. Because that's going to be the stumbling block. It's all right getting a buyer for him.
Yeah.
But getting it for a buyer, I don't know precisely what Cyril Dessers is on, but I've heard from good sources, that it's very well paid.
Yes.
And he quite rightly is not going to go to a club that says to, well, our limit is 15G a week, unless some accommodation can be made with Rangers as regard the transfer fee and to accommodate them for wages lost. I mean, because it's not unlikely that a lot of the clubs that want him would be wanting to play a percentage of his wage raise at the moment, maybe as low as 50-60% of what he's getting at the moment. So that might be the issue.
Yeah. As far as getting him out the door, they obviously want to try and get a few players in. The one thing I was going to say, the only thing about the Rangers dispatched Fraserburgh out of the way comfortably, the only one thing that rears its ugly head over the weekend constantly is the passing from the back. I mean, Mason Munn, the Rangers' young goalkeeper making his debut in the competition, he had a pass at one point that gave Fraserburgh a chance. There's a real mad obsession in the game that I can't bear, Ali, is this whole passing.
Yeah, we touched on it, didn't we, on the journals last
terrible.
week? Yeah, I think sometimes you see teams just falling into step with it. It's almost like it's become the fashion just now, just to play at the back. And often I think you're seeing teams that just don't have the personnel to play that way, sticking to it all the time. When you think sometimes there's nothing wrong, just clear your lines, get the ball up the pitch. There's a time and a place for it, and I can understand the philosophy behind it of building from the back and being patient and not giving away possession. But there are moments in games where you think it invites trouble and pressure. Celtic at Dundee a couple of weeks back, Dens Park, I think they lost 2 of their goals from trying to play out from the back.
Yep, and situations where they didn't have to, just hit it long to whoever's up front.
That game in Germany, the 7-1 hammering. How many? They lost about 4 goals.
The interesting thing about that was last night, I wandered round to my son's house for my dinner. It's like the carer day off. So I've got to impose myself on my family. And he was sitting watching Ipswich, and I said, Ipswich are playing out 5. And this was a random 5 or 6 minutes. I said, watch them for the next 5 minutes, and every time they play it for the back. And it's a random 5 minutes. Played out for the back 4 times and lost the ball in their own final third 4 times.
Yeah.
4 times in a row. Now, if you had the Gianni in the side, never mind somebody with a UEFA A licence, if you had the Gianni, you say, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I mean, it's repeated failure. You can't, because you're playing against Manchester City, who are pressing high, who are very confident to get the ball, and when they get the ball off you as well, in the final third.
They're going to, they're a menace then, you're going to concede.
But Alisson hits it in the head. You've got to have the player who's confident to take that ball. If you watch, every time it goes to the full-backs, there's a midfield player who's making himself available, saying, here, I don't care who's pressing me, just give me it and I'll pull you out of the hole.
Yeah, but here's a great point. One of our viewers has mentioned there. He says, most of the time, you haven't got anyone decent for a long ball to hold up play, because that is the key to it all from the old
Possession.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a big, long ball.
No, I know that, but
I think
sometimes...
it's like passing it across you see sometimes just passing across your own box.
Yeah, but one of the greatest ever managers this country's ever seen in Sir Alex Ferguson, Gary Neville in an interview once said, we were playing at Anfield against Liverpool, first thing he said is, listen, see, as soon as we take kick-off, get it in the channel, let's push them. Let's press them in their half. Yeah. And to be fair, I am actually, I'm watching Ange Postecoglou on the verge of getting sacked for this absolute lunacy, which is, something that so many managers up and down the country, honestly, see if sticking a banana and an apple on your head was the thing that made you a better footballer, you'd have them all with sellotape on it. I mean, I remember Robbie Fowler walking about with the tape on his nose because it helped him breathe better. Now we've got them cutting holes in their socks.
Yes,
Your mob are all mental, Ruffy.
don't know.
And now we have this situation. Let's play it all out from the back. Let's let this team squeeze us in the 18-yard box and then they'll score. It is complete and utter nonsense.
I'd love somebody to tell me, what's the socks right over the knees, pulling the socks right up the knees? What is that about?
Yeah,
I don't get that. I don't get that.
Another one.
I'm saying back
that's the pertinent problem of the day. We're all talking about nonsense, but Ruffy hits what's on the lips of every football fan.
What? And then getting back to the defenders, I used to play with. You were saying, "Here, have that." No, don't want it. No, don't get it to somebody else.
Yeah,
because they didn't have the ability to get the ball and find somebody.
Well, I was talking to what I'd call a junior manager, a very good junior manager, a few months ago, and he was talking about what he liked in defenders, and he says, he's playing junior football, West of Scotland League, and he said, I like my centre halves big, strong, and if they're quick too, perfect, but big and strong, and hit the ball the way they're facing. That's fine. I said, what about this playing out in the back? He says, if they're big and strong and playing out for the back, they wouldn't be playing here, they'd be playing at Bayern Munich.
exactly. I know, exactly. There was a big guy, honestly, when you think about players like that, there was a big guy who scored up at Pittodrie one night, Klaus Augenthaler. Augenthaler could have played right wing. He was that good. He was like Beckenbauer. He could play anywhere. And they could hit ping balls everywhere, but for God's sake, it's madness.
Big Colin McAdam.
Aye.
Big Colin, when he played with us, any ball came in the box, you just shouted, Colin! Use Colin!
That's exactly what you want. Do exactly. It's a Ronseal moment, isn't it? Do what it says in the tin, head it clear. So Rangers through, Celtic through. Obviously, both sides have got big weeks coming up with European football, but Celtic in the end, I think the story of it, is it fair to say, is basically, Ali, that they have countless chances, can't put them away, and then the other team get a wee sniff and get back into it.
It's incredible though. You look at where Celtic are and the sort of stats of winning games that'll take out, Rangers out of the equation at the beginning of January, but there is an anxiety around Celtic Park when Celtic don't put chances away, because there remains a kind of feeling that they're vulnerable defensively and prone to mistakes. As a kind of, I thought it was an unlucky goal. I thought there was a bit of fortuitous. The ball coming off Robbie D's arms. Like, you could see his arms are tucked in. I don't think it's a handball, but it just breaks kindly then at the back post for Bobby Wales. But
who cares?
I think Celtic. I think when they're not scoring goals, and they are creating chances, but they've been pretty profligate in a number of games across recent weeks, that you sense the anxiety within the crowd. It's a quick crowd just now to get on their backs.
Yeah, Kyogo missed 2 sitters.
But Kyogo's not. I mean, I have this.
As well,
I have this argument about Kyogo all the time, and you see his highlight reel, and his highlight reel is sublime. Some of the goals he scores.
Yeah.
He's not a good finisher.
He's not.
You see, like some of number ones, it's not numbers, one-on-ones that he misses. Big chances as well that can. I mean, even at Ross County, which became a fraught game for Celtic, Kyogo had 2 or 3 chances in the first half, directly in front of the goalkeeper. Dundee United, which ended up nothing each. Yeah. He had a 1-on-1 again.
Hugh, I think he's better though with someone whipping the ball in, and he comes
front
across.
Absolutely, and just hits.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, he's a great player. I mean, one of the great things about him is his movement. We're going about this. We say it all the time. If he was a goal scorer, of an Aguero, or I mean, he'd be just a complete player, but he wouldn't be at Celtic. Manchester City looked at him, and he was definitely on a list there. It was because of his movement, the way he can join up play, the way he can create room for others. He was really good playing off the side against Dundee. I mean, I like him in that role. He's more involved, but he isn't the clinical finisher. But I always laugh at this when, you'll hear it from Clement, you'll hear it from Brendan Rodgers, you hear it from so many managers, and they'll always say the same thing. If we've been more clinical in the final third. But there's a reason for that,
There is another element to this, Ruffy, which is quite simply, when you get some of these players who are using, and rightly so, are coming to Scottish football to then get a stepping stone to bigger things, whether it be Europe or the English Premier League, you have managers who want to try and make them better players. I mean, Philippe Clement will be passing on his all his experience. Brendan Rodgers always emphasises the fact that if he's got someone like an Adam Ida, you've got to give them time, you've got to work with them to try and make them better players, and then they move on.
Yeah, but it's where they move on to. As Hugh said, I don't know if you're talking about Kyogo, he's not going to move on to a top 6 English team, I don't think.
No.
And that's where they all want to move. If you ask them all, why are you here? They'll say, because I want to go to a bigger club.
Yeah.
You know, and Celtic have now got their head round that that's the way it's got to go. But you're talking about strikers, prolific strikers. If I'm looking at the scores for abroad, you know, at the end of the week, and I'm looking at the Real Madrid game or the Barcelona game or the Bayern game, before I see the score, if I see the score, I know who scored the goals. It's Lewandowski and it's Kane. And that's, for me, the prolific scorer. That's the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. They're at the absolute top end, the elite level, though. Brendan Rodgers, this is what he had to say after, obviously, that close win, but they got there in the end. We know what the objective was for the tournament. I think we've done really well until this point, but we want to get over the line and into the knockout stages, and this is off the back of that win at the weekend against Killie. It's now young boys. In the main, apart from against Dortmund, we've shown up well in this competition. We want to keep that going. It's going to be an amazing atmosphere, and I'm excited about the opportunity. So, again, Brendan's managed to get the team past Kilmarnock. They're into the next round, and now it's all about young boys. And for me, this is the defining moment of why he was brought back.
Yeah, to try and get them through. And I think if you had to go back a few weeks, I think Celtic fans might have been a bit more confident about this game than they are now. I think for a while it became you'll beat young boys at Celtic Park. I think it'll be a tough game. I think it'll be difficult for Celtic on Wednesday night, but I think the prize is clear. I think if you go and take 3 points, then it's obviously you've still got the Villa game to come, but it would take the pressure off that one entirely. But I think they need to be better than what they've shown across recent weeks. I think they've looked tired, Celtic. I think they've looked quite lethargic in games. Just the number of games, the volume of games across the Christmas and New Year period, and he's obviously tried to rotate the squad at bits. But yeah, I think it'll be a tough game on Wednesday night.
And of course, with Champions League, there also comes Europa League, Old Trafford, Man United, Rangers. Ruffy, it's fantastic. Our reporters, Blair and Patrick, will be heading down there on the Wednesday and filling all of our social media with the colour of the build-up to that game and the aftermath as well.
Well, that's the games you want to be at, and that's the games you want to be in. That's why you're in European football. Been fantastic stadium, fantastic history that they've got, but the quota's got them at the right time, you know, because they're absolutely all over the place. And the weekend there, Man United, the evidence was there that if you're in the Rangers camp, you've got to think you've got a chance of getting something out of that game. Yeah,
I think Ruben Amorim, will hear from him shortly, but he's got a dismal group of players he's inherited, hasn't he?
Yeah, and there's already signs that he's cowed by it as well. I don't think his statement at the weekend, I don't know where that comes from.
Yeah.
Being the worst Manchester United side, I don't see the point in that. I don't see. I think it's a sign of a guy that's stunned by all and maybe overwhelmed by it all so early. You know. It's so difficult to know where to start with Manchester United.
But is it a good time for Rangers to get them?
Yeah, it could be a better time. I'm not saying that they'll even get a result, because what you've got to remember about the Premier League is we say this is a good time to get them, but there's quality in that team, and comparative quality in that team. Whether they can all join together and raise themselves for a game. I mean, I watched them against Arsenal, and they were good against us. Arsenal suited them because they could sit back and use their pace.
Yeah, but the flip side is, Hugh, as I'm just pointing out, is I accept, that level that the English Premier League is at, but while they're off the boil poor, Rangers in Europe, usually against good sides, have really excelled, haven't they?
They do well because that suits Rangers as well. I mean, it's a funny game in Thursday night because the game plan would suit both sides not to have the ball and sit in.
Yeah.
But somebody's got to have the ball.
Yeah, that's a good point. Give us your thoughts on who you think is going to win the matches. Celtic against Young Boys and Manchester United against Rangers. Give us your prediction on that as well. And if you want, you will get the build-up on the managers, what they have to say ahead of those games. And then, of course, that special feature, Manchester United against Rangers. And talking of special features, our reporter Blair was with the Clydebank boys. The fans, he'd been interviewing them, he'd been interviewing the manager, some of the players, and getting on the bus and heading to the game. as well, no less, at Easter Road for the Bankies. And out on social media, Ruffy, it was a fabulous piece with Blair, and there's a longer extended version coming out. You'll be able to view it later on this evening and, of course, at your leisure all this week. Well worth looking at. One of those great Scottish Cup adventures.
Yeah.
Blair's put it together. Fabulous watch.
Well, that's what the Scottish Cup's all about, the history of the game, you know, shocks, upsets, you know, travelling to the game, games, parks you've never been in before, and for the supporters, going along in the bus must have been a great atmosphere, and I'm sure they would have enjoyed every minute of the game.
Yeah.
Over 2,000 Clydebank supporters there.
It was a great show as well, yeah, absolutely. And to get on the bus with the fans must have been a real trip down memory lane. It's been a long, it's been a long time since I've done that. And Blair stayed sober throughout, Ruffy. You know, there was no cans on the bus or any of that nonsense.
Yeah, I think he was hoping they're getting it, you finishing the piece off by getting it on for the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to spoiler alert.
Yeah, exactly. But David Gray, off the back of that win, the Hibs boss, clearly looking towards the transfer window before it closes. He's getting quite a few players back, which will make his squad stronger, but he's keen to make sure that if they are able to add that wee bit of quality, it's players that will come in and make the team better.
Barry back today, Miko back today, Joe Newell's not far away, Ellie Yuhan's not far away, and then we've got Marvin Ekpateter slightly further away. So he'll probably be looking at intimate sort of February time before he's back. But you know, there are 5 players that are real strong players that can come back into your squad, which is good. Whilst the window's open, we're always looking to try and improve as well. And if the right people come up that we feel can make us better, we'll definitely try and do that, which is positive. And I think the key is to try and make sure when the window closes, we're in a stronger position than when the window opened, and that's the challenge.
It's all good for Hibs at the moment, Ruffy, isn't it?
It certainly is, and they're getting the results now. The supporters are getting behind the manager, which is good, and the players. He's right what he's saying there. The players they've had out, nobody's been taking that into consideration when they have been getting the results. So it's a big part of any team. It'll be interesting to see where the new signings come from. Everybody seems to be tapping into down in England on loan. There seems to be loan players coming up from England quite a lot. I see Ross County get another couple. So, you know, it's always interesting at this time for the supporters. You know, some of the players they know that's coming in, some they don't, but it's always exciting.
Yeah, I fancy a wee search from Hibs in the second half of the season. What do you think? St Johnstone 1, Motherwell 0. I don't think too many of us predicted this outcome. Here's what both managers made of it all.
It's a very difficult one to put your finger on because we all say the same thing. Let's start the game well. You know, we think as if we've reinvented the game and we've said something different. We try and make sure that players warm up properly. We try and make sure that we do our preparation, our work through the week. Areas where we can try and exploit with the ball to try and put the opposition in the back foot. But you have to execute that. That's just words. That's just all talking. That's just me giving you a spiel there. But that's how you do it. You affect it on the pitch by doing your job, by doing the things that have put us in a reasonable position in the league, which have taken us to the dying embers of the other cup competition.
But yes, as you said it, you know, the performance, it was good. First half we played solid game with the ball. Second half we defended what we needed to defend. That was very solid as well. So as we have been talking a lot, it has not been easy. This game tonight, it was a cup game. We wanted to play this, you know, in front of our home fans. It was big result for the players, big result for the club, big result for the fans, for everyone, because it has not been easy.
Every penny's a prisoner, and St Johnstone will have banked a few more quid from getting past Motherwell. And I'm speaking to some Motherwell fans not happy with the way that game panned out for them. Of the other results, Ali, Aberdeen stopped the rot and get a 3-0 win at Elgin.
I think there's a few maybe just looking towards that one with echoes of what happened to Jim Goodwin's side this time a couple of years back. Yeah, I think they'll be relieved just to come through it unscathed, clock it off, and Jimmy Thelin will be hoping maybe just to use it to kickstart things in the league. It's been a devastating run for Aberdeen, that first one in 13.
Just before we get your thoughts on some of the big stories down south, of course everybody likes to keep their eyes on what's happening in the transfer window. Here's Cara's update for us.
Alexandro Bernabe has completed his permanent move to Brazilian club Internacional. The Argentine played 28 times for the Hoops from when he signed in 2022. Dundee United have announced the loan signing of striker Rory Payton from Port Vale and are close to another loan signing in Luis Fiorini from Stockport. Over the weekend, Rangers signed 22-year-old defender Rafael Fernandes on loan from Lille with an option to buy in the summer, and reports also suggest that Besiktas are interested in Tom Lawrence. Finally, it's strongly suggested that Celtic are interested in Aston Villa striker Louie Barry, but Villa are reluctant to sell at this point in time.
Okay, just a wee update there on some of the movers and shakers. Down south, this is the most outrageous press conference line. Ruben Amorim, the Manchester United boss, on his team's defeat to Brighton.
We are getting a new coach that is losing more than the last coach. I have full knowledge of that. Like I said, I'm not going to change, no matter what. And I know we can succeed. But we need to survive this moment because I'm not naive. And I know that we need to survive now. So we are being the worst team, maybe, in history of Manchester United. And I know that you want headlines. But I'm saying that because we have to acknowledge that and to change that. So
I'd just like to remind Ruben that I've seen a few Duff Man United sides in my time, one that got relegated.
That's what I'm saying. You've seen the Manchester United team in the second division.
Yeah.
Right. So, and even if you go before, what people forget, if you go longer term before Matt Busby, Manchester United weren't a leading team until Busby came in post-war and led them to glory. And then people forget the years of drought before Alex Ferguson came as well. So I just don't. Sometimes I sit and listen to, and he knew it was going to be a headline because he actually references it. Says, "I know I'm going to make headlines for you."
Yeah.
I don't, especially seeing the modern game, Peter, where seeing the old days, players were used to getting. You would be Bertie Hall coming in.
Well, he's testing what kind of player he's got.
And see players now. Players now are just going to say, "You know what? I'm not listening to that."
Different culture entirely.
Different culture entirely.
Yeah, multi-millionaires.
Yeah,
it's different.
exactly. And the
you know?
power is all with players now, whereas it used to be with managers who could withhold moves, etc. The power is all with the player now.
Can you see anybody stopping Liverpool? Nottingham Forest, maybe? No.
I don't think there's a depth.
I don't see Arsenal doing it.
I think Liverpool, if they, I think Liverpool for me, yeah.
Yeah, if they can keep scoring goals in the 97th minute, Ruffy, that'd be great.
Yeah, but the other teams are all cutting each other up. I think the bigger picture is what about Ange? Is he going to hang on there?
I must admit, and I don't know about you, but I mean, while Ange may well have had the Celtic fans purring with every style of football that he delivered for them, I'm afraid he's lost me. He's lost me with that Tottenham side. They are, even with the injury shoe, they are woeful. They are terrible to watch now.
Last night after the Ipswich game, I was listening to a really good piece of punditry by Dean Ashton, who had taken, and I love
Dean that played up front for West Ham. Yeah,
and I love people putting a contrary view, particularly when they can back it up. You might not agree with it,
yeah,
because that's what's up. We have it in this show. We argue about each other. And I thought he made really good points about Ange. That he said that he took the contrary view that they had to keep Postecoglou because the team had just been wasted by injuries. When he had a full team, they had some really good performances against the top clubs. He'd got them to one game away from Wembley, and possibly playing Newcastle for a cup. They're still active in Europe. So I thought that took the edge off my criticism. I thought I was quite persuasive when I looked at the injuries he's got in specific areas as well. But of course, the whole thing boils down to anyway. The problem with Spurs is not the manager.
Absolutely, Hugh. You're right as well. But I honestly, tell me I'm wrong on this, Alison, Ruffy, but if you are a manager with injuries and you're wanting to avoid defeats, stop playing that way with an inferior player that you have to put in there.
Yeah, I understand that argument. However, I can also appreciate his argument, which would be if I deflect now from this philosophy that I'm trying to instill in my team and this culture and this methodology of playing. If at the first sign of trouble I bail out of it, what message does it give? So it's almost like if you're going to go down that way, you have to stick to it and you have to trust Spurs. I think what's a really interesting thing about Spurs is that the boys that have come through that are doing all right are all the young kids that he's brought in. It's not your Timo Werner that would get you sacked.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's all the young boys coming in that you can see are buying into what he's trying to do.
I have no problem with the philosophy, Ruffy. A manager's job is to get the best out of a team and try and change and adapt to get the wins. That's what a manager's job is, how to get the best out of it, regardless of a philosophy. A philosophy is only great if you get the players that can play that philosophy.
Yeah, and unfortunately down in England, the big thing is where you are in that league. And as soon as you get near that bottom three, there's panic station setting.
But it's the finances around it are massive.
I think he's lucky that there's 3 teams that you would imagine would go down.
It's
definitely one that's down. I mean, Southampton's down, so there's 2 others I think that is down. Going very parochial, the big story about Spurs with me is, can we get young Gray just to see he's a Scot? That's a big story.
That would be fun. You think with his family background and everything,
his uncles.
I know, it's absolutely incredible. Listen, lots of great comments. Some you like, some you don't. We always thank so many people for sticking with us on the show. We are absolutely delighted. The figures ever increasing right across our social media. Our reporters are out at the grounds. I always mention to everyone, we're a football show. We talk about football. We try and be as balanced as we can, and we give an opinion. If you want, as we always mention, we always like to promote club TV as well. If you want, a situation where you can just talk about your club and they can do no wrong, and they can give you propaganda, by all means go to it. We will send you a link. But if you want balance, then this is one of the shows, among others, that will give you that. So thank you for your support. Hit the subscribe button. I can see Ali laughing away there, but I'm of Hughes vintage that quite simply is, every now and then you need to come off the ropes and land a wee punch yourself, Hugh. Is that fair?
I just see it as it's football. It's not. We're not talking about matters of incredible import. We're talking about football, and then if you don't give an opinion about football, it'll be a very boring show.
Absolutely, and as Denis Law did on several occasions, why not retaliate first? Yeah. Just get your boot in there. He was a magnificent player, and football will miss him. Denis Law, rest in peace. Jimmy Calderwood, who brought a smile to so many people in football, also rest in peace. From this merry band here who work with us on a regular basis, don't forget we've got the Women's Football Show. We also have the Journos coming up to look forward to. Straight Talk's coming back shortly, and we've got the Footballers Football Show, which Ruffy is making an appearance on Wednesday. You looking forward to it?
Yeah, I certainly am. Yep. Unfortunately, Tom's not here. He's taking over for the holidays in this company.
Wait a minute. He started the show, then went on holiday.
Know, it's just,
what does he think he is? Johnny Carson? Michael Parkinson?
This is it, which leaves the door open for Scott Allen's Footballers Football Show, because Scott Allen will be the presenter alongside Ryan McGowan and Ruffy, and our special guest is Dundee assistant Stuart Taylor, who's coming on the show obviously to try and highlight the problems that lots of footballers are facing as they go on in later life, dementia and Alzheimer's. And I think it's going to be a really interesting insight, not only to Dundee, but of course coaching and his memories as well. But he's going to put across quite a kind of a heartening story on Alzheimer's and the work they're doing and what he's got planned coming up in the next couple of months to try and raise money and awareness for that particular charity. So Stuart Taylor is our special guest in the Footballers Football Show. From Alison, from Hugh, from Ruffy and from myself, Peter Martin, thank you for listening and thank you for watching.